Okay, these are the notes for chapter 1.3, the moon. Um, the moon always rises in the east and it always sets in the west. Like the planets and sun, the moon moves from west to east relative to the stars. Roughly, basically what it's saying here is look, it rises in the east and it sets in the west. Here's the moon here, right here. And it takes about an hour for the moon to move um, one of its widths. So if we came back in an hour, the moon would be sitting right here. Next hour, it would be over here. So it takes about an hour for it to move its width through the sky. During a period of about 30 days, the moon goes through a complete set of phases. The new moon, there's no moon, it's just dark. And then waxing. And I like to think of wax as putting the wax on a floor, waxing the floor. I don't know why I think about that. When you're waxing the floor, the area you wax gets larger and larger. So waxing means it's getting larger. Okay. And then it hits the full moon and then it starts to get smaller or it wanes. So waxing, it's getting larger. Waning, the second part of its cycle, it gets smaller and smaller until we just see these tiny little crescents and then another new moon and the cycle starts all over again. It takes about a month for that to happen. The phase cycle. The phase cycle is the origin of the month, derived from the word moon as a time period. The phases of the moon are caused by the relative positions of the sun, earth, and the moon. Okay, so here we have it. When it's a new moon, the earth and the sun are lined, earth, moon, and the sun are lined up. As it waxes or gets larger, you can see we see more and more of the moon. We see a full moon when it's opposite the sun. Waning, excuse me, when it's waning, it is getting smaller. Now, you would think when the sun um, and the earth and the moon's on the other side, I wish we had a three-dimensional picture or a flat. Um, it does not move perfectly. It's uh, the moon's orbit is a little bit tilted, and because it's a little tilted, the Earth's shadow does not fall on the full moon. Very rarely does it do that, and we know that's an eclipse. That's the next section. We'll talk more about that. But because it's off, um, it's not a perfect flat orbit. It orbits at an angle. You know, flat orbit would be um, like this, but it orbits at a little bit of an angle, so the Earth's shadow doesn't fall on the moon very often. Lunar rise and lunar set. Um, so the moon rises roughly 50 minutes later each day. So if you look out and you see the moon rising at, say, I think the book says 8 o'clock in the evening, but if it's 8 o'clock in the evening when you see the moon, if you look the next evening at 8:50, you'll see the moon in that same position. So it takes about 50 minutes. It's 50 minutes later each day. So if the moon um, rises at 8 o'clock, the next night it'll rise at 8:50. The next night, 50 minutes later, 50 minutes later. Okay, until it makes a cycle. The changing time of moonrise means that the moon is visible at different times and places during the night or day, depending on its phases. And because of that, rising 50 minutes later each day, that's why sometimes you'll look up in the sky during the daytime and you can see the moon in the sky. And you're thinking, what's the moon doing there? It's just on that 50-minute cycle. All right, a sidereal month. Now, um, what happens here, and you can read these, we'll see as we go along. It takes the moon. All right, here's this lineup of the new moon. Okay, the new moon's right here. And um, what happens is it takes the moon to orbit the Earth 27.3 days. That is a sidereal month. 27.3 days is a sidereal month. Okay. So as you can see, starts orbiting. It takes 23 days to get back to the same spot. But notice now, it's not facing the sun. It takes 29 and a half days for it to line back up with the sun. And it's just because the Earth is also orbiting the sun. Okay, so this, as the Earth goes around the sun, the moon is going around the Earth. So it takes the moon 300 to move 360 degrees, to orbit 360 degrees, a sidereal month or 27.3 days. It takes 29 and a half days, pretty much 2 days longer, for it to line back up and give us a new moon. So even though it goes through its orbit in 27.3 days, it takes 29 days, 29 and a half days to get to another new moon. That is it for section 1.3, chapter 1.3 notes. Hopefully it helps you with your homework.